Welcome to Up on Game presents Taylor Scouting. Coach Rany Taylor is bringing his 40-plus years of knowledge to you. This is Taylor Scouting. And now, here's Coach Rany Taylor.
All right, folks, we are back with Coach Taylor and the Taylor Scouting Podcast. I'm Coach Rany Taylor. We're going to do what I think is kind of fun, and I call it a women's clinic. We did this one time when I was on the football staff at Illinois, and we had a football coach, Mike White, who all of the women thought he was an attractive guy, kind of a Paul Newman-ish type of guy. So we did a women's clinic and had several hundred women, maybe 400 or 500 women out there at this place, and it was outstanding. And ever since then, I've wanted to do a women's clinic type of a show for this podcast, and so that's where this came from. And I think what's great is that we have an opportunity for education for the moms and the sisters and all of that. So we'll kind of get this started. We're on what's called Up on Game Presents, Up on Game Network. And so you can subscribe to that through your iHeartRadio app, through Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's Up on Game Presents. Please rate and review this podcast, and you can follow us on social platforms by searching the Up on Game Network. You can also search and follow me on Twitter and other social media sites. My Twitter handle is rtaylorfbscout. Okay, so feel free to follow, and we're going to learn a lot about recruiting, football recruiting, college football, high school football, and this is the time for the moms and the women to be a part of this. I've chosen 4 very special women to be a part of this show today. Levita May is from Orlando, Florida. She has a son who is a 2024, I believe, right, Levita?
Yes.
A football player prospect being recruited out of Carmel Catholic in Northern Illinois near Chicago. We'll get back to Levita in a second. We have Susan Katzian. She is a longtime friend and lives in the Baltimore area, and has a lot of athletic and legend experience and background and DNA from her family, the Chaplin family, and from Champaign, Illinois, and the University of Illinois. We also have my 2 sisters. Sandra Taylor Henson is my younger sister. She has a daughter that was a Colorado Buffalo. She's very much involved and interested in all sports, college football especially. And my more experienced, beautiful sister, Victoria, who has kind of been somebody that I look up to, and she's really been a good friend and a role model for me. And so I've asked these 4 great women to be a part of this show and ask some questions that they may have an interest in, or we got some questions through Twitter and through different places, and are now going to be the kind of the co-hosts and read those questions to me that we've received. And then I am going to answer them, and we'll kind of just see how this thing plays. And hopefully we are going to educate the masses, all of the women, moms, and girls and sisters, and anybody in the support system, right? So I'm going to start with Levita. And Levita May, first of all, Levita, talk about your son at Carmel Catholic.
Well, Harlan is 17 years old. Right now, he's playing as a DB. He had 6 interceptions last year. He had a really good season. So now the recruiting process, of course, has started. People reaching out, inviting him. First, it was game days, then junior day. We did we did one about 2 weeks ago. So we're in that process, the beginning stages of it. He's very excited. Good kid, 3.4 GPA, he's smart, and he's really excited about it and just ready to, get the official offers rolling and, see where he can go.
So Levita is coming at this as a parent, as a mom of a current prospect. And so Levita, what was your question that we wanted to get to today? First one.
Well, so how do we know as parents that colleges are legitimately looking at my student athlete for recruitment and possible scholarship offers? Like, how do you really know?
And it's always tough because the college coaches don't tell you. It's not, they just are going about their business, and you figure it out as time passes. So the key is the amount of contact and when they're contacting you. There's a lot of different rules that the NCAA has that I think every parent should go to ncaa.org and read the recruiting rules and look at the recruiting calendar. And so that's a really important part of this for you to understand the rules. But mainly you're going to learn if they're DMing, texting, calling, writing, whatever the process is, being invited to junior days, being invited to games. And the more that you're having this communication, the more you should realize that he is a recruit. Because if they're not interested, they're not contacting you.
Okay.
If that makes sense. You also will know by the level of school that's contacting you, what level your son may play. And that's important to keep an eye on as well.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Levita. We'll be back to you in a little bit. So we're going to go to Susan Katzian. Chaplain Katzian, excuse me. I got to get that chaplain name in there for the folks from Champaign.
Yes.
Susan is and her family really is a legend in the Champaign and the University of Illinois world of basketball and football. And we're happy
And
to have
baseball.
her. And baseball, yes. I'm glad you're here to tell me. Yeah, so I want you to help me with one of these questions, and let's just get right into it.
Okay. What seems to be the recruit's most important concern about the college or the university that you represent? Like,
or any of those colleges that are evaluating or looking into your son, right?
Right.
So I think the recruit's most important concern is going to be playing time. I think there's also facilities are important. Social life is important. So those are really kind of the three things that most kids make their decisions based on. I will say this, the education you would think should be the most important part. And a lot of times it is, but that's more for the higher educated, higher GPA type athletes, where they are going to want to try to go to a Stanford or a Yale or a Harvard or Northwestern or wherever that might be. Not that it's not important for all the prospects, but it may not be at the top of that list. So those three things I think are the most important questions. Playing time, they want to see the facilities. That's the commitment the college has to the program. And then social life is really important. We had Tom Lemming on here the other day, and I think he said girls, which is kind of part of the social life. And I also think that the boosters, the alumni that have some notoriety or are associated with the school, it is important as well. Me being I've worked at UCLA, so Troy Aikman's a UCLA guy, so all of that stuff kind of fits into that. So appreciate that, Susan. We're going to come back to you. Did I get that question? Did I answer it right?
Yes, and you know what? And my question was, is education a big thing? And so thank you for answering that.
Well, I try to get that stuff in. Education was not on my top list of, the other three were probably higher than the education part, but I did graduate, so I got that going for me.
Right.
So now we're going to go to my younger sister, Sandra Henson. And Sandy, as I call her, she goes by Sandra, she was an athlete herself. Her daughter just finished up at Colorado as a Buffalo. She is probably the most passionate and interested young woman that in everything that's happening in college football and in all football, and will text me questions about different things. So I'm interested to see what Sandra's first question is for me today.
Okay, bro. Coach Randy, when you're recruiting a student athlete, are there signs that you see in a player that shows you that he would be better in a different position?
Yeah, and what's interesting, that's a huge part of this process. Many players are recruited as what they play in high school or at the junior college, but the college coach knows he's probably going to be something else. And the secret of this whole thing is you got to understand, and I think there's something we'll talk about later, you got to understand what the important things are to that student athlete. So if a college coach has the ability to project, let's say, a running back to a linebacker or even to a defensive lineman, I mean, there's some great D linemen in the NFL who used to be running backs. And so all of those, that ability to evaluate and project is really important. And it has to do with the physical attributes and athleticism to fit another position. And sometimes the lack of ability to play that position at college. So some quarterbacks have great stats in high school, but they're going to come in and be recruited as something else, or at least will play something else when they get to college, because maybe they don't have that tight spiral or the arm strength or the decision-making process, but they're great athletes, or they can do something else that's great. I will add one other thing. I think the transfer portal has impacted this too, because colleges aren't taking players they can develop anymore. And I think that goes to the number of recruits, and it has something to do with the transfer portal, and all of those things tie into this and are a part of the process of deciding if a running back can be a linebacker or whatever that might be. So that's where I am on that. And we're going to go to, did that answer your question?
Yes, you answered all my questions.
Well, we're going to
Thank
have,
you.
we got more.
Okay, good.
Don't go away.
I won't. You're very
So-
informative.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much. I didn't have to pay her because she's my sister, and I know I'm going to pay for it somehow.
Yes.
Anyway, so let's go to my other beautiful sister, Victoria. What was your question?
Hi, Coach Taylor. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Coach Taylor, Mama Bears are very important a part of their son's high school football team, but are they acknowledged? And what are the most important ways they should be included?
Yeah, that's a huge topic for high school coaches and for college coaches, because the parents have a role, but they need to know where their role ends. So that mama bear has to understand that they're needed and wanted in the process. But there's a term or a phrase, and we call some mamas and papas, that should be a musical group. Some mamas are kind of the helicopter mom, right? And what that is that's the hovering. So those helicopter parents are the ones that are hovering, and that's not good for anybody in the process. And it actually can be a problem for the coaches and other players if it's out of control. And I think the key is the parents have to understand that their young man has chosen the school with their advice, of course, and they just got to step back and trust in their decision. I think that's the key to that. And we know it's your boy, and we know you want to be involved, but let the guy blaze his own trail, if that makes any sense. That get what you wanted?
Yes, I kind of have a funny kind of very warm something that I heard about, and then I went and looked up online about and found out that several high schools throughout our beautiful country have the mama bears put on pads and helmets and play a practice game with their sons. So I thought that was a great way to involve the mama bears.
Yeah, that is an interesting way to do it. I hope they have a lot of liability insurance.
I know two states, Illinois and Oregon, were involved for sure.
No
I
kidding.
can remember.
I like that. I'm not sure how I would handle that as a player, though. My guess is if it's my mom, I'm probably letting her score a touchdown. You know, I'm getting out of the way because she's going to be cooking for me later. Anyway, we'll get back with you in a little bit. Victoria, we are going to go back to Miss Levita May and see what else she might have for us in this women's clinic.
All right. So what if a student athlete has offers before senior year? Should they feel pressured, let's say by like the college coaches, to commit before the summer?
You know, that's a great question. And I think every player, every athlete, and I'm sure Harlan's going to have the same kind of decision-making. Does he have offers right now? You don't have to name schools, but does he have offers?
Some unofficial offers. Yes.
They're all unofficial until they sign.
So they're right. So
Right.
not an official one yet, no, but you know,
Gotcha.
hopefully some things are cooking up.
Oh, good. So I think there's several factors to this. One of them is, how do you feel about the school, right? If I'm a young man, if this is my favorite school, then shoot, it's a no-brainer. You know, go ahead and jump in there and commit. I think sometimes it depends on what the school is offering or what they're saying. You know, how many players at your position are they going to sign? Ask the coach or the head coach if possible, what are their plans if another player commits at your position? You know, it's not supposed to be, but there's an NIL aspect of this. Colleges aren't supposed to be using NIL in recruiting, but I think we're all not naive enough. We understand that the NIL might be a part of this process. I would also say check the internet, you know, go to 24/7 or Rivals and see what that school's depth chart looks like. And then, are you willing to sign somewhere? And this is kind of that transfer portal thing. Are you willing to sign somewhere at a lower level, but with the eye on transferring? I'm not sure I love that part of it, but I think that's a process that families are going through. And I'm not sure if that's ethical, but it is, I know it's happening. So I think before you commit, a lot of those questions have to be answered.
Okay.
Okay, Levita?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything you want to add because of Harlan? I know you're right in the middle of it.
Well, it was funny that I believe it was your younger sister, Sandra, part of her question. Harlan is a DB, but they are recruiting him as a safety. So that was funny that came up because that is exactly what's happening right now with him. So it's real. It's really real.
Yeah, it is. And what's interesting is he may be playing corner in high school, you know, and be that DB that plays corner. But most of the time, because I know Harlan's body type, he's probably going to be a guy they're going to project to safety, just like you're saying. They also could have an eye on him being a linebacker at some point.
Well, you know, this
I
somebody
know,
will be
I
happy
know,
about that, right?
I know the answer, but that's what they're thinking, right?
Okay.
And a lot of it has to do with, you know, he does have those DB skills, but he may grow into that linebacker. And
Okay.
that's the growth part of that comes in.
Okay.
All
Do
right.
you think it's frowned upon to accept and then go somewhere else? Because I've heard that happens.
Well, it happens a lot. So if he commits somewhere and then decides later, or another school comes in that's his favorite, you know, it depends on your definition of the word commit. And these days in college football, it doesn't mean what it used to mean. You know, there's players who have committed 4 or 5 different times before they actually sign with somebody. And it's not great, but it's the world we live in, and college coaches are used to it. But I think there is a part of this business, there has to be some integrity and those aspects of a person's character that should be in the process. So sometimes it's not the best thing to do is to commit. You may think, well, I might lose this one, I might lose this one, but there's going to be options. And we talked a little bit about it before with Sandra. So I think you got to ask yourself all those questions.
Okay. Makes
Okay.
sense. Thank you.
You got it. So we're back to Susan Katzian, Susan Chaplin Katzian. I have to always throw that in because my wife, you know, has to get the Champagne Chaplins into the mix.
Right. And I appreciate that.
So what else you got for me?
Okay, so what do you think is the number one question that the recruiter needs to know from his student athlete?
Yeah, we're kind of on the other side of this now.
Exactly.
So I'm the high school coach, and I think we have to know what's the athlete's most important thing or need or whatever it might be. I think that's the first thing we have to find out from an athlete, what's important to him.
Right.
And then I think that the other thing that we have to find out is who is the decision maker or is going to have the most impact on the young man in this process. And so, you know, that third party, there's always, you know, might be one of the parents, it might be a friend. These days, it could be a 7-on-7 coach or a trainer, all of those things. So to me, the most important things, what's important to the athlete and who's the decision maker in the process. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good questions, you guys. Now we're going to go to Sandra. Back to Sandra Henson. Sandra
Hi.
Taylor Henson.
Hi,
How are
Coach
you?
Taylor. Fine,
Hey,
thanks. How are you?
So now what? You got another question for me?
Yes. How has the transfer portal changed the recruiting landscape for these high school guys and kids?
Man, that's a great question because a lot is the answer. And I think at the most basic level, you know, there are a certain number of spots that you can get in as a Division I program, you know, so 85 is the number that these colleges have to live in or live within. Now, one of the good things the NCAA did is they eliminated the initial eligibility, the initial scholarship, or the initial, what am I trying to say? The initial scholarship rule. And that was one where you could bring in 25 in a year, calendar year. And there are a lot of different rules about it, but they eliminated that one. So now we're just talking 85. And so if you look at it this way, that really, in my opinion, it's probably cut in half the number of high school prospects that will be recruited and signed at at these main schools, at Alabama, at USC, and so that's the problem. So now if they're not taking 25, they're taking 12, and then they're going to take whatever 12 or 14 transfers. You've eliminated the number of those players. Now, the one thing it does help, it helps the FCS programs, because they're going to be able to get those players that would normally go to an FBS program. They're going to get them at their level, and will have an opportunity to have a better roster. Now, on the other side of that is, if they go to that FCS program, they may transfer. And so
Okay.
there's all of those things are a part of it. And I think the whole transfer portal idea is definitely one that impacts the mid level player more than anything else that there's been in college football, any of the other rules. And that's why. The one thing it does on the other side of this, because of the transfer rules, they then can transfer or go to a school and transfer to that school they may wanted to go to before that they got bumped from, because they took a transfer. You know what I mean? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes. Now, does it, when you're talking about the mid-level player, does that help the mid-level player?
Well,
Then?
see, so the mid-level player is, so the FBS, the Division I or the Power 5, that's the elite level of college football. And so after that, the next group is the lower level FBS. It's like the Mid-American Conference. It's like the Western Athletic Conference, or the different smaller conferences, Big West or Mountain West, I think it is now. So there's that trickle down. So the kids that would have been a part of that 25 that they're going to sign this year aren't going to get the opportunity, because the transfer portal kids are going to take up some of those spots. So now those kids are going to end up going to a smaller or a lower level FBS program, or even to a FCS, or even to a D2.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So it just kind of trickles backwards. So
Yes.
the player, so let's say I'm a kid that is probably in the second level of interest by a school. So USC thinks I'm kind of in their second group of players. Well, because they're going to take a couple of transfer kids, I'm not able to go to USC. They took the transfers. I now have to go to Sacramento State or San Jose State or somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yes. So
So
there's pros and
you get-
cons, huh?
Yeah, there's pros and cons, and you get bumped. And so that transfer portal is a huge impact, in my opinion, on high school recruiting.
Yes.
Susan,
I just have a question that,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is the right spot for it, but I remember when people would transfer before, they would have to sit out.
right,
Now, is that gone?
that's gone.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And it's gone, they fixed it a little bit, so that's the key to the transfer portal, is you can play immediately. So
Yeah.
if you sign with Northern Illinois, right, and you really want to go to Illinois or Michigan or wherever, you could go to Northern Illinois for a year and transfer and be able to play right away and not have to sit. Now, they did change the rule a little bit where you can only do that once, right? So you can't just keep transferring to find a spot to play. If you go the second time, you're going to have to sit a year, like
Okay.
the old rule. Got it?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're on to Victoria. Back to Victoria. What do you got for me?
So, Coach, for many sons, it's football, high school football is a career path today. Okay, so for especially single mothers and other mothers, where would they go to look the best avenues to find out how to navigate with the agents, NIL, and also with the portal? So
Yeah,
that they're like a little ahead of the game before these coaches start,
Yeah, that's a little bit ahead of the game for the high school athlete. I
Okay,
mean, it'll get there, but the thing that happens is, as a high school athlete, I may find out, if I'm an elite player, I may have an opportunity to find out that there's NIL money for me, right?
right.
But it's not going to be something that it's not even appropriate for colleges to use it as a recruiting tool.
At this time.
Yeah, at this time. So that's you're a little bit ahead of the game. That will be something that once you're in college, the NIL and the transfer portal and all of those things become more of a factor. And so you have to weigh what the school you're in now is giving as NIL money compared to what you might get. And it's really more like NFL free agency than anything else once they get to college.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. I think it'll be helpful to a lot of mothers.
Yeah, so the high school kids, don't start counting your money yet, right? So, I mean, and it's not even necessarily legal or ethical for colleges to use NIL to get you there. We're gonna move on, young or experienced sister, to we're gonna get back to Levita. Did you get all of your questions answered?
I have another one.
Okay.
So as a mom, I think you may have possibly answered it somewhat with the mama bear question, but as a mom, when do you know to step in on the recruitment process? Like, do you trust the coaches and your son, or when you don't know a lot about recruiting, like I didn't, and I'm learning now. It's a big trust process, that everyone has your son's best interests, in mind.
Yeah, and I think that I think your experience and intuition as a mom has got to take over, and that's when you and Rob are going to be advising your children on things that they're going to do before they become adults or before they get to a point where they're making their own decisions. But I think the college needs to. I just was handed a note. I think the college is going to know about your, want to have the best position for your son. And in today's world, they also get that they can transfer if it doesn't work out, if there's a mistake. Does that make any sense?
It does. So to that point, more on the coaches and the other question, do you feel is it necessary? Is it a recruiting tactic to remember who was the first person that offered you, or it's like almost like a guilt trip? I don't know if so I hear through someone very close to me, of course they, the first person, and that makes the child feel good, and that's who showed them the most interest. But is that like a mind game situation or what?
Yeah, no question. And I always felt at the schools, especially when I was at UCLA and rules were changing and the offers were more of a thing, I wanted to be first because of that very reason. So
Okay.
I wanted to have the first offer to this elite kid so that we'd be able to come back and, hey, remember us, and then we have to then continue to work, obviously, until signing day. But yeah, being first is an important thing because, like you said, as the mom, it's kind of nice. Hey, yeah, that was Coach Jones or whoever offered my son first and was got the whole thing started. So it's definitely a tool that college coaches will use. Some don't care. Some will wait and make offers later and then just bank on the school to be good enough, or the program or the academics or whatever they're going to use to recruit your son. So it all depends on the school, but I always wanted to be first, like a Stanford or a Northwestern. They aren't able to do that a lot of times because they don't know where he's going to be academically in some cases.
And that is very important. I hear at all schools, but some schools more than others. Like if you don't get a certain score, it doesn't matter how great of an athlete, you're not coming, right?
Yeah, some schools now with the changes and with COVID, you don't even have to have an SAT or an ACT score.
Oh,
And so that's, you gotta figure out which conferences, that's a rule. You know, the academies all have, you have to have it for academies, you have to have it for the Ivy League, and every school is a little bit different. So, you know, Northwestern might want it more than Illinois, I guess, if that makes sense.
it does. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go back to Susan. Did you get everything you needed to know? Unmute your.
There.
There we
Yeah,
go.
I have another one too.
Okay.
It's kind of like along with the previous discussion. It's more if it's more the mom that is the one involved in the family side of it, and if she's the one going to the meetings and she's the one, you know, in conversation all the time, but occasionally the husband is there, and then all of a sudden the recruiters, the coaches, whatever, gravitate toward him, and then she's like, whoa, you know, I'm the one that's really been doing all this. How do you, you know, how do you handle that when she really wants to be as important because she's feeling not?
Yes, I
Yes.
think that's a huge part of it. And I think that the colleges have to understand who's the key person. Like I said earlier, talk about that third person,
Right.
you know, who's the decision maker. If they're good at what they do, they will figure out that mom is the one that maybe is more of the decision maker or is more invested. Sometimes, and it goes both ways, the dad may work a lot, may not have the opportunities to get involved. Maybe the mom is a little bit more forceful or influential. So the college
Passionate.
coach has to know, yeah, college coach has to know who the key is. And if it's the mom, they better be directing their attention to you. And if they're not, you can make the decision, you know, they're really not paying attention.
Mhm.
And if they're not paying attention to me and what's good for my son, then I'm not sure that's the best place to send them. So you have to evaluate them on everything they do as well, including how they handle you in the recruiting process. And you know, the in-home visits are a part of it. And so there's so many aspects of this recruiting that involve the relationship and how college coaches interact with the player, the cousin, the brother, you know, whoever it might be, is all a part of that process. And so you got to understand it and make sure that you are focusing on they're the most important part to that athlete.
Right. And it's good for those moms to know that they need to stand up for that situation. If
The old sexist football coach is going to think dad's the guy, right?
exactly.
So don't, you know, you got to recruit the mom. I've always said that, or grandma, and those are the two people that you always have to recruit. And so they better not get too carried away and just think the guy is the one that knows football.
Right.
Because I guarantee you this, my two sisters know more than I do about football. Anyway, Sandra, we're back with you. Do you
Hello.
have anything else, young lady?
Well, I do. Well, one thing I'd like to say, I wish I knew as much as you know.
Well,
Now,
you're always working at it. I get those texts.
Now, listening and learning, because Randy, you are so talented, player, recruiter, all of it in football. And I'm so proud of you.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll get you that check, right?
Oh, good. Thank you. Maybe add a few more zeros.
Yeah.
So I worry about the mid-level player, but now, as you know, you've been explaining everything. If the mid-level player is going to a lower school, lower division, if I'm wording that correctly, if he improves, will a recruiter keep an eye on him and maybe get him into the transfer portal to a Division I school?
You know, that's really, it does happen that way with the transfer portal. It is created another role within the Division I, the FBS Power 5 schools, of having that guy or guys or whoever, girls, are keeping an eye on all of the schools, the other schools in the conference. Now, it is illegal for them, or against the laws of the NCAA, for those schools to tamper, as we call it, with a kid at another school. So somehow, and that's where some of these 7-on-7, it's a whole, ball of wax that's been created, because the 7-on-7 coach can get involved, and I may be at Notre Dame and I want this kid who is at Northern Illinois. And so somehow through the 7-on-7 coach, or through the high school coach, or somebody else, a third party, I'm going to say, hey, if your guy's interested in transferring, we'd love to have him. That is that's a violation.
Oh,
But it's happening all the time.
okay.
Everybody's just kind of turns a blind eye to it. And that's, like I said, it's the NFL free agency
Okay.
kind of a thing. So if I can get more NIL money at Notre Dame and I'm over here at Northern Illinois, that may be where I want to go. I just need to find out if they're interested. And so that tampering is a problem in this business.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I never knew about that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hopefully it helps them out.
There's a lot of tampering that goes on, and some of it has been approved because of rule changes, and some is still violations, but it's still going on. So,
Okay.
Victoria, how are we doing? Okay. Do you have anything else for me?
No, but I do wonder about the player himself. Are they learning good life experiences playing high school football? Accountability, respectability, dependability, because it's important when they go past high school football, they're there on time, they're there on the practice on time, they're there at work on time, or whatever the case might be. Do you think that high school football helps in those respects, Coach?
No. Absolutely, 100%, because everything you do in high school is about education in reality. Like you said, they're learning the academic side of it in their classroom, but they're also learning life lessons, and that's also part of the education from high school is dealing with other kids that have different interests than you, or may see things differently than you. That whole life experience that you get in high school is something that is a huge part of the education. And then they go to college, and that's another step in their education and in their life lessons and learning about teamwork. And high school sports in so many ways helps people become more reliable, more responsible, have more dependability, so all that, show up on time. And those are huge things in the real world too, and in your job and in whatever the heck you're going to be. And so I think that's a huge part of it. It's all about education. And I think the high school coaches across the country do a great job of teaching their kids those lessons. So that's an important part.
Thank you, Coach.
You got it. Anybody else have anything? Did we miss anything? Miss any of your great questions? Last chance, Levita. Anything that Harlan has asked you that you may want to throw my way?
No, I think I may have covered some things that he'll be very interested in hearing once we can play this back. So
I know one thing. I know Rob will get a hold of me.
that is a for sure thing. Yes, you do know, you are correct there.
Yeah.
He's just excited and he's ready to get that first offer in, because I guess that first time, get it out the way. He's worked so hard all these years, so I'm very proud of him.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of them, and his time will come. It's just, you read all of this stuff about this player getting stars and this and that, and all of the notoriety. And by the way, guys, the stars that they get at Rivals and 24/7 and these other places, it's really, that's the media. And it's really kind of like in the old days when we were all state or all conference or all American or whatever it might have been. That's basically what those stars are. It's just put into the internet, and there's much more, the message boards and all of it's just bigger and louder than it used to be when the newspaper wrote up who the All-American was. So that's really how you should think of the stars and that situation. And so I know Harlan's time is coming. And I look forward to watching him and see how he does.
Well, thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks guys for coming. We chose these questions as a good representation of the ones that we received, and we kind of did through Twitter and things. We had people send some of these questions in, and I want to thank a few moms who sent them in who aren't on this illustrious panel. And so Corey, Carrie, Sarah, and Carrie with a K. All of you guys, we used your questions, and we want to thank you for sending those in to my direct messages. And we'll hopefully do this again. This was kind of my first time with it, and I think I've learned a lot too. And I sure appreciate you beautiful women for joining me on my first women's clinic on the Taylor Scouting Podcast.
Thanks,
guys. I'm going to wrap this up and close out the show. Remember, you can subscribe to Up on Game Presents on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review us, and follow us on all social platforms by searching the Up on Game Network. And you can search my Twitter page at rtaylorfb scout. Please know that you can go to www.taylorscouting.com to find more information about what I do on the side. And make sure you can go to YouTube and watch Taylor Scouting on the Up on Game Network on your YouTube channels. Okay, search Up on Game. I got to make sure I get all my business done. Okay. Thanks, guys, for joining me, and we will see you on our next show.